I roasted Gemini 3.5 into the ground. It failed every hardware test I gave it. So when Gemini 3.6 dropped this week, I kept my word and maybe secretly prepared to hate it too. But I couldn't. This is Smoke Test. Let's get into it. As with every hardware project, we're going to kick this off with part selection. So, the good part of part selection with Gemini 3.6 is that before we even get to the initial questions, we see this queuing up of potential hardware choices. It's already starting to think about the differences between the hardware choices and what that actually means for the project itself. We see that broken down in the UI. So a standalone rig versus a PC tethered rig. Those function differently. We need extra hardware for a standalone rig, but a PC tethered rig means that you're going to have maybe a little bit bigger of a mess, or you're going to have a PC laying around, or we need to buy another PC. And so it changes some of that. But inside of that, and again, before we even get to the questions, Gemini 3.6 gives great context to help me answer those questions appropriately. Things like describing what a standalone rig actually does and the difference between that and a PC tethered rig. There's different choices in terms of connectors and how that changes along the way. We see all of that there broken out across these different pieces that it already knows are going to be important. Even the format was helpful as it broke these up into specific sections that made it easy to read and follow along and then answer the questions. Based on the answers, you can also tell that it really understands the tech specs and also intercompatibility between two different pieces of hardware that are going to have to communicate. The project, as I've tested standard across all of these different models, is an object detection camera looking down onto a desk and then talking with a friend over the internet. One of the important technical decisions is latency in the communication system. If you've ever watched a newscast where the main anchor asks a question and you're waiting on somebody to reply, that is latency. And the longer that goes, even in a small amount, it feels like an eternity. You don't want it to feel that way. And so keeping that latency really small is important in object detection and live comms. Another is just how challenging it is to see really small parts from 2 to 3 feet with a single optical sensor, especially if that sensor is being moved around. It understands this, it understands tech specs. You can see that in the way that it talks about the parts that it chooses. Those are the good things. The bad things in part selection is that it's only 3 questions. 3 questions just is not near enough. You can't get enough information on the nuances of any hardware project with 3 questions. The 3 questions that it asks are very important. What type of parts are you identifying? Will it be plugged into a PC or does it need to be fully standalone? And what's your budget? All of those questions are completely valid. We've seen them in every single model that we've tested. Those 3 show up consistently. But you need more. As an example, as we talk about how difficult it is to see objects and detect objects with a single camera that's moving around, that would have been a great question. Do you want something that you have to manually focus every time you move? The answer would have been a clear no. I don't want to deal with it. In the same way that I don't want to manually adjust my smartphone camera, which is why everything's autofocus now. It's just a pain. It's a convenience to have autofocus. Had I been asked that question, I would have chosen that. But it didn't ask. And there's a lot of other things it didn't ask. And so, again, 3 questions just isn't enough. Variable focus, good to point out. It's critical. It should have asked, which I would rather do. Now, you are free to iterate on this as much as you wish. I've chosen not to do that here at Smoke Test. We're testing it out of the box. As always, the more you iterate, the better it gets. Those are the good and the bad things with part selection. Once you've selected your parts, the next step on any hardware project is to go purchase them. And so we do that with what's called a parts list. The good aspects of the parts list on Gemini 3.6, this is what a parts list is supposed to look like. This is the standard. This will always be the standard. If you've wondered why I get so frustrated at these models, it's because this isn't difficult. This is really, really simple. I have a category, I have component descriptions, I have a couple of links, a primary and an alternative, and then also an estimated cost. We're not asking for the world if we're talking about assemblies or sub-assemblies or components or subcomponents and how to put all that together and revisions. They can get complicated, but this is pretty straightforward. Up to this point, we haven't seen any of these models produce a single structured parts list until Gemini 3.6. And if you're looking through these estimated costs and you wonder if they add up, they do. Unlike some of the other models that we've seen and discussed in other videos. These add up. It makes sense. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's not rocket science. That's the good part about the parts list. The bad part is that a lot of these links, they don't exactly work. If you watched the video that we did on Gemini 3.5, we said what our expectations were of Gemini when it comes to links. We expect them to be good, but Gemini 3.5 told us that we should lower our expectations. And so we have. A quirk specific to Gemini is that sometimes inside their links, it's actually a Google search with the link embedded in the search. Sometimes you can take that link, open a new tab, plug it in, and it'll go to the right place. And sometimes when it's going to Amazon, it will not. Other times when it's going to specific retailers, it's not actually searching the product page, it's the home page. They still have work to do to get those right 90+% of the time. Before we were at like 30%, now we're hitting about 60. That's a 2x improvement. It ain't great, but it's better than it was, and so we'll take it. A little note here, with the Raspberry Pi 5, we see a lot of times an estimated price of $80, even though that part costs $175. I don't know where this has come from. It's in a lot of the models. We've seen it almost everywhere in some way, shape, or form. Since we've tested multiple iterations of different models, we've seen this show up over time. I'm not sure if that just got ingested in their training data. A good next step is to verify that the price of the product matches the price at that link. That would be a great next step for all of these models. We see that again here, but for the most part, the prices are right. But for some reason, Raspberry Pi 5s, it just doesn't understand. That's the bad part of the parts list. As we get into the build instructions, in the final phase of every hardware project, the good part, and there's not a lot to be honest, is that the camera that it chose has a 1/4 thread. And so as it describes how to mount the camera to the standard camera mount, we see that that actually makes sense this time because they chose the right parts. And so the instructions work. I will say very, very light on the high levels. We're talking about unboxing and putting together, but that's about it. As we spend more time on the bad part of the build instructions, very light across the board. We've seen this between different models here and there. This is the place where they could improve the most. Here, we still see a lot of the same things. It's very light on the instructions, very few details, no tools at all. We harped on that a ton in the last video, so I won't berate it this time. Every single model does this a little bit differently. I would say at this point, Gemini, in terms of build instructions, is probably on the lower end. Additionally, every single model has failed when it comes to installing an active cooler on a Raspberry Pi when you're using any version of an AI hat. I want to be clear and fair. That's what Raspberry Pi describes in their documentation. These AI models, they're not people. They don't know how to discern. Raspberry Pi makes their documentation available, and then they ingest it and they feed it back to you. If these models take in bad information, even from the manufacturer themselves, the output will still be bad. So you're relying on bad information, you're going to get a bad output. It's just the way it goes. A few final thoughts. First, do me a favor. If you like these videos and you want to see more, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel out so we can keep making more of these videos as we review AI for hardware. This week, we see the Gemini 3.6 took tremendous strides forward. Tremendous strides forward. If we gave out a trophy for most improved model over the last 6 months, Gemini 3.6 over 3.5 would win it hands down. It is that much better. This is actually one of the few times that I've seen compatibility discussed by any model. When we're talking about tech specs and how fast processors run or how much compute they have and what we're asking them to do from a software side, it's rare to see that, but it's here and it's written out in a way that is easy to read through for a beginner or an expert. Now, if you want to go dig through the spec sheets yourself, by all means, have fun. I'm not a super huge fan of that, so you can have fun by yourself. It's also the first to actually put a real bill of materials together. We call it a parts list, bill of materials. Those terms are interchangeable, but it's the first one to do it correctly. We're not asking for the moon, a table with 6 columns. It's the first one to actually put that together fully in a structured way that we've asked for. And that's great to see. I also want to point out that I know it's really difficult to stay up to date with all of this information. If we look at just the last 2 weeks, we see that OpenAI released the latest version of ChatGPT. Grok 4.5 was fully rolled out to everyone. Gemini 3.5 pushed live this week. Pre-training for Gemini 4 was announced. Fable 5 keeps getting extended. Opus 5 was rumored to be dropping today, although I haven't actually seen that happen. I know how difficult it is to keep up while you're doing 100 other things. If you're getting into AI or hardware for the first time, it may seem a little daunting. You may feel like you're choosing the wrong model, but please hear me. Just choose one. It doesn't matter. Just like what we've seen with Gemini 3.5 and now Gemini 3.6, if you'd have tried it 6 weeks ago, you would have been way behind everybody else. And then 6 weeks later, you're kind of mid-pack. It feels about average across the board. It's better at some things. It's worse than others. It depends on who you are and what you need. But if you want some of the information that we just recapped here in your inbox, you can sign up for our newsletter on AI for hardware. Get the same honest taste without the hype. If you sign up today, we'll give you 10% off at anything you purchase, and you can find that at smoketest.show. That's smoketest.show. So, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. This has been Smoke Test. My name's Brandon. We'll see y'all next time.